that roar when you ran out just puts goosebumps on the back of your neck.
He strikes it!
It's not just what he does with the football, it's what he does with his boot.
It's great rugby league, the man AJ Brimson.
Just let him grow into a footballer and he's going to be a star.
It's been pitched by Ben Hunt. Go Dozer! Ben Hunt wins the Origin for Queensland.
Well, thanks for joining us for a very special edition of Queensland. It almost feels like Christmas time this week here in Brisbane for Magic Round. Every game of the NRL being played in our city. You guys live not too far away from Suncorp. What's the buzz like around the city?
Yeah, I reckon, you know, it's similar to Grand Final week. Like Grand Final week, it's two teams focusing on the biggest game of the year, but we've got all the teams here, bar who's by Newcastle.
Nice, yeah.
So all the teams here focusing on the biggest round of the competition. So for me, it's very similar to a grand final week, and it's, you know, I've always said it's great for the game, but it's also great for Brisbane.
People are talking about it, aren't they, Lockie? Going into the streets, you go into a shop, people talk about Magic Round coming up. What's it going to be like? Who's going to be in control? What teams are you going to support? You'll have the thrill of watching all the games. The fans that turn out to watch the games, obviously, are going to get to be able to watch a couple of teams. Not just the team that they're supporting, and there may be some that just turn up for the entertainment of watching, 3 games of footy, from teams they really couldn't care less who wins, loses or draws. It's just the entertainment factor.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fans that come to this, obviously they've got their own team, but there's probably a lot of people just come for the event. Might not even be rugby league fans, but they just come because it's a 3-day festival.
Yeah, and I often find that this is one weekend in particular where people show a lot more interest in the weather, what it's going to be like. Are we going to have a horror weekend where every game's played in the wet? Well, fingers are crossed, and it sounds like things are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, we're having a look at Suncorp Stadium. Well, they've actually done a pretty good job considering there was a rugby union game there on Saturday night. So they've got the lamps out there. I know you're talking to Alan Graham about it. They're doing their best.
Yeah, he certainly he's overworked a little bit at the moment, Alan, and he's very busy, but very determined to make sure that when the first game runs onto the field, that it's in pristine shape.
Well, it's one of the I guess risks with Suncorp now. So in the summer, they have a lot of concerts there. Yeah. So they rip the grass out, then they bring in the new grass. This time I think it was only 2 or 3 weeks before round 1, but now you've got the Dolphins in, and the Roar are going back there. So just the traffic that's going through Suncorp Stadium is something that's always going to be, I guess, in the front of their mind. They're going to have to keep this grass looking good for all of winter.
Yeah, at least there's no torrential rain forecast this week. You remember, taking mine back to last year, they did such a good job holding on the ground, considering it poured rain for 3 days. Yeah,
it was terrible. There weren't too many people that were expecting it to be in any shape whatsoever. But it was fantastic, and I think everybody was a lot more comfortable at the end of the tournament, that's for sure.
And Lockie, given it's a party-type atmosphere, do you think the clubs would put in restrictions, maybe curfews on the players just to make sure there's no incidents?
Yeah, look, I reckon given the amount of influx of people into Brisbane, and there's probably a lot of these people staying in hotels in and around the teams, look, I think it's a little bit of a risk. I guess some clubs might treat it different to others, but look, at the end of the day, the mentality should be you're coming here to do a job, and that is come in and play your best footy, get the win and get out of there. But giving back to the game, I reckon there'd be a lot of, interaction with the public, because there'll be a lot of people staying in the city that are staying in and around where these players are that want a photograph or an autograph.
Yeah, it's exactly right. An outstanding promo for rugby league, and for young kids in particular. The thrill to have watched the best players in the game when they're on show, and they're not far away at all. They've got the opportunity to go and watch them and see a few games. Well, that's something every young rugby league star of the future wants to try and achieve.
Potentially any benefits, Lockie, for recruitment in the player market, like talking to a player from another club, given that they're such close proximity?
Well, it's probably a little bit close to home, because normally they'd fly them up or you'd fly there.
Yeah.
And you've got to be off contract, by the way, too.
It's probably too obvious this week to do it.
Yeah, so I think if there's clubs out there that are worried about some of their players who are off contract going to other clubs, I reckon they might be watching them very carefully.
Yeah, maybe up to Wayne Bennett's house at Redcliffe to get the
might be a few
Dolphins
meetings
deal
going on around the place. They'll be playing cards or something might be the excuse. But
A bit different to the old Super League ARL war when they were meeting at the airports and doing deals in the Qantas Club, or back then it was the Ansett Club as well.
and then fly back. One of the big games of Magic Round, Lockie, Broncos up against Manly. First time Seibold's coached against the Broncos since the tumultuous time as head coach. Do you sense there's any bad blood still there, or has it been resolved?
I don't think bad blood. I guess Seibold would be wanting to beat the Broncos given what happened at the club. But I don't think. I think it was a tumultuous 2 years where a lot of, I guess there's a variety of reasons why it just didn't work for Seibold and the Broncos. And look, I think it's a big learning curve for him. He would have learned a lot out of the process. Obviously a very uncomfortable process, but he'll want to win. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think it's bad blood between him and the Broncos.
Yeah, I think that's an important point you bring up, Lockie. A lot of people will talk about the thrills you get and what you learn from being successful in football, but most of the big names in the game believe that you learn more from your losses and the bad blood, the bad times. That's where you go and repair the damage that you may have caused, or something has been uncomfortable for you. But you certainly do in these difficult times, I think, learn to work a little bit harder and make sure that you achieve every success that you're chasing.
Is it a bad time to be playing Manly? They're coming off a disappointing loss to the Titans. There's talk of infighting, two players having a bit of a scuffle. Their recruitment managers going to the West Tigers, apparently. Is it a bad time to be getting Manly?
It might be a bad time to get the Broncos too.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's a few things there, I reckon, away from the playing field they probably need to get in order. But, do we know anything about Turbo yet?
Seibold did an interview today with 9 News and he said likely to play, yeah, so...
I still don't think he's 100% fit.
Yeah.
Manly, on the ladder they've done well, but I don't think they've been outstanding. They've had a couple of good wins, but there's probably a bit of inconsistency there. I'm not saying they can't make it all happen for 80 minutes against the Broncos, but I would think the Broncos, given their performance, will get to that, and the players coming back, it's probably not a great time to get the Broncos.
Yeah, just on the Broncos, that performance to the Rabbitohs, losing 32 points to 6. Well, was it just a case Souths were too good, or something else wrong with Brisbane you noticed in that match?
Oh, well, Brisbane, I thought they were okay. They started the match pretty good. The opening quarter, not everything went right, but I didn't think that they looked like they needed some desperate guidance. Certainly the second 40-minute period was a pretty poor showing from the guys, and I think Kebby would have had plenty to talk to his players about and try and repair. Look, I think every team, as they go through the season, they're going to have a bad game or two throughout the course of that period. You don't want to invite it to arrive, but they've been in some pretty fair form prior to that, and I think that they gained enormous amounts of confidence, sitting in a great position on the ladder. Perhaps that sometimes can cause a little bit of overconfidence, and the best thing for you can be a defeat. I guess we'll get to see that. It's never too much fun losing a game, though.
Well, they were in that game for quite a long time. Yeah. The score blew out, and then when they got behind on the scoreboard, they hadn't been in that situation for a long time. So that was when I was sitting there on the sideline thinking, well, how are they going to react to that? And probably, as you say, they're sitting on top of the ladder and the game's gone. So it's not like they gave up, but it's like, let's just look to next week.
I'm glad the Rabbitohs got a win because I tipped them to win the premiership at the start of the year. I also tipped the Storm to miss the top 8, so that looks like a terrible call. So the Rabbitohs could save me on that account. You look shocked. I just think the Storm lost too many players in the preseason. Like, they've lost too many players over a long period of time, and this is the year it would catch up to them, and it proved wrong so far.
Well, you probably put the Cowboys in the top 4 too.
Let's not talk about the Cowboys. It's purposely not on shit.
Well, we also, Adam, with Adam sitting me next to in the newsroom, he had me chewing his ear pretty much every week for the last few years. I'm a bit of a hands-on Melbourne Storm supporter. I love the Broncos, but outside of that, love the Melbourne Storm. And he used to hear from me every week about how good they're looking. This year, it's sort of settled back a little bit. There haven't been too many occasions to celebrate this time round.
Yeah, big game on Saturday night. That's probably the highlight of Magic Round for mine. Rabbitohs up against Melbourne Storm. But just a couple more, Lockie, on the Broncos. Did that game highlight the importance of Payne Haas to the team? Like, they try to talk it down, but it's almost as if no Payne Haas, no Broncos win.
Well, the stats show that the Broncos have won plenty of games without Payne. But I guess against the good teams, it was probably pretty evident that they missed his presence. There was no Ezra Mam as well. I sort of was thinking going into the game there's probably 12 points less there for the Broncos, given those two guys were out. But, I think Payne's obviously we know what he's capable of. He creates a platform for his backs, and they missed him, no doubt. But they as a team, they still could have played and executed better on the night.
Yeah, you're right, Lockie. It was quite obvious how much they were missing him. And the times that I noticed most is when Brisbane managed to hold the opposition out, just avoiding a try being scored, and then for the next few tackles after that, that's when you need your dominant players to do the work to get you out of that danger zone up to the around about the halfway mark where you can put a good kick to the corners and try and get some position back. That's where I believe that they missed him most of all. There was a lot of guys that certainly were buggered, they were tired, they just could not put their hands up, and they missed him, and it wasn't just for the attacking plays.
And without Oates as well, so you're missing your two players who rack up the most running metres. That's almost impossible to replace so quickly.
Yeah. So, how do you compensate for that? Well, you just got to get the guys you've got and just keep it really simple and just run with intent. Get up as quick as you can to play the ball and build that sort of momentum with your ruck speed, because effectively that's what Payne does and that's what Corey Oates does. They get the sets going with their runs and their momentum. So you just need to look at the players you got and go, righto, well, this is what we need to do to create the same effect that Payne has and Corey Oates has for us.
And just on the Dolphins, narrow loss to them. The NRL came out and admitted they were robbed a bit in the lead up to that. A 6-again call shouldn't have been made. It was incorrect for the Raiders in the lead up to their match-winning field goal. But while they went down 31-30, is it concerned that they're starting to leak too many points?
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, Adam. I guess, we can all sort of talk about they were robbed or they didn't deserve that loss. But I'm sure the issue that Wayne would be going back to would be how they let in that many points. It's always been a favourite of his to assess the damage that was caused in the defensive line. And I think that he'll work overtime with it. Winning a game like that is certainly going to be something to celebrate. Losing it, definitely you've got to say that they've got to keep their defensive line intact a little bit more than that. And it'll be interesting to see what Wayne's reaction to it was. And having played under him, I'm sure Lockie would say it, that sometimes you do learn a lot more about your own game and your team game, particularly from Wayne, because he'll pull that game apart quite perfectly. And I'd be very surprised if they don't play at their best this time around, because he always used to say you learn more from a loss than you do a win.
Yeah. I remember when it went into Golden Point, because I don't know whether the stats back this up, but he's not a fan of it.
Yeah.
He's happy with the draw.
Yeah.
So I knew when they went into Golden Point, they got beaten, and I'm thinking he's gonna arc up about it. Yeah. And look, they got a call wrong, the referees, and again, we're going to get decisions that human error is going to be a part of refereeing. So look, for me, yes, defensively they need to probably be better, but if you look at their last two games, their starts need to be better. They let in, was it 28-0 against the Titans?
Yeah, 26, yeah.
The 26, they got that back, but then they had a slow start and Canberra got out to a good lead the other day. So if they get their starts better, I think they put themselves in the game a lot quicker. Yeah,
the one thing Benny used to love about games like that was the performances of the player. He said he used to learn more, again, about the performance of the players in difficult times. They were the ones that will always get a place in his team.
I think too it was Scott Minto who actually scored a match winner in Golden Point. I think David Gallup was the NRL CEO at the time. He said, I had to convince Wayne Bennett to get Golden Point. Do you remember that game?
Yeah,
Scott Minto scores
that's
in the
Wayne's
corner?
love child, Scott Minto.
I can't remember who it was against.
I remember he jumped like a kangaroo when he scored. It was down at Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Olympic Park.
Yeah.
Wayne was on the sideline. Yeah. Very rare time he's on the sideline, but yeah. So I'd have to look at the stats, but I reckon they're going against him. But yeah, Golden Point, he's not a fan.
You're right. And it was one of the rare times he ever celebrated. You know, he'd see his success like that, and he'd be smiling and think, "Now I'm going to give a players a mouthful about this." But he was jumping up and down and giving the yes, and blokes were looking at him going, "This is a first. We're not going to see this too many times."
Well, I think look, it's there for the fan experience because I think. The ratings even show when we go into Golden Point, the ratings go up because and people like a result. So look, the coaches, they're probably happy for a draw, but from a fan experience, and we're in the entertainment business, people want to see a result.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. Just before we wrap up, a couple of Origin contenders or Queenslanders indeed to talk about. Kalyn Ponga, while he's come back, it was a bit of an underwhelming performance for the Knights on the weekend. Are you worried about him playing 6, or do you think fullback? He's got to go back to fullback. What do you reckon? Too early to tell?
Well, perhaps. I think he was going okay. I quite liked him at fullback. I really did. He reminded me so much of Lockie during his time there. His vision, he used to, pick exactly where he wanted to run, pick it out and go and place himself into the back line in that position and did it quite well. Yet I do believe that he is a bit of a natural 5'8". But the one thing that he had to stand up for was, being targeted. He basically felt like he was run over by a steamroller, quite a few times, and he's come up with some injuries, some difficult ones to get over. And I think confidence is always a wonderful thing. How you repair it and how well you play after that is probably the most vital point of all.
Lockie, if you could sit him down and go through some tape of the game, what would you point out to him as someone who made a successful transition from fullback to 5'8"?
Oh, look, I think there's obviously a bit of expectation and pressure on him. And, I think what would have added to that as well, that they'd had a couple of good performances while he was away.
Yeah.
So he came back into the team. So I think that added a bit of extra pressure on him. Look, my message to him would be just to keep it really simple. In attack, think like you're in the halves now, you've got to think about playing the long game. It's about managing the game. It's not about all-out attack like you do it as a fullback. You've got to be thinking about your kicking game. You've got to be thinking about building pressure, getting through your sets, etc. It's pretty boring, but that's what you've got to do. Keep it simple. He's got enough talent to then add to that as the game wears on. And then the other part of it, and look, it's quite topical at the moment, but he's, defensively, it's just get that right. Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean just turn up on the day and say, I'm going to defend better. Like, he's got to practice that through the week, get to game day, and then focus on his D, and then just keep his game plan really simple in attack. And his talent will show, when the time comes.
Adam, there's probably only one thing I haven't really noticed too much because I haven't seen too many of his games live. And I remember watching Lockie when he first came along, and the talk was all about this young guy that came along. And the one thing that he was always doing, which was an instant notice to me, was he was looking. Every play that was on, there'd be a ruck breaking down in front, and he was sort of looking out to the side. And that's where you get your key ball players. It's all about vision, looking for an opportunity that might present itself, or you want to make an opportunity take place. So I haven't seen, too much about Kalyn, how he's been able to handle it. But if he's doing it a little bit difficult at the moment and getting knocked around, I don't think it's a little bit of a problem if they need to adjust his position. But I think certainly his long-term place is and has got to be at 5'8".
What about if he keeps playing 6? Does that put his rep jerseys in jeopardy, Lockie? Because Munster's a lock at 5'8".
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I remember when I took the jump from fullback to 5'8", one of the biggest things I had to consider was my rep jerseys. And at the time, we did it because the Broncos had lost Kevy and Elf, and we'd had a lot of instability in the halves, and we just felt between Wayne and myself, and we talked through it for a long time. And we thought that was the best thing for the Broncos, and I was willing to do that, but I also knew there was a risk involved with my rep jersey. So, but look, I think he's made the decision. He just needs to back himself now. And You know, and I guess it's from the perspective of playing Origin, he's fortunate and he's got a guy like Billy Slater as the coach who can still, you know, remove him from playing six from a week-to-week basis, bring him back to fullback and remind him of what that position demands. Look, there's no doubt there's a risk involved, but I don't think he needs to be thinking about that right now. I just think he needs to focus about his job and his performance for Newcastle every week.
And another young Queensland, Sam Walker, touted as a potential future Origin player. He's not in the Roosters' top 17 at the moment. Well, what would your advice be to him, given that he's playing reserve grade at the moment?
Well, look, I don't think he's going to lose a whole pile of confidence. Certainly, he picked up a fair bit of that from the beginning of the season. I think he's proven himself to be a quite a polished performer. It may not be what the Roosters were, and we've got to remember too that when he dropped out, they did have some injury woes there. They were without Tedesco at the back. So there may have been some issues taking place that weren't all that comfortable for him. But certainly a lot of the things that you learn in the game through the tougher times are certainly the ones that become the most vital in your end result.
Potentially, could he be a successor to Adam Reynolds down the track, Lockie, or is it?
Oh, look, he's a quality player and he's a talent. Look, you'd have to look back in history. There'd be hundreds of players that have played for their state, their country, that spent time in reserve grade.
Ben Hunt did it at the Broncos, remember? And then he came back and played for Queensland,
You know...
Well, you would have got dropped at some stage of your career.
I went back to reserve grade, played probably 6 or 7 games there. Look, I think it's just part of your journey. And you know, he's a kid still. He's 20.
Yeah.
He started as a teenager and he's plateaued out a bit. So, you know, it's just part of the process. It's part of the journey. Go back, work hard. The opportunity will come again. So it's just learning and, you know, understanding that setbacks are going to happen and you just got to make the most of the opportunity that's in front of you.
One more I want to float. If he falls out of favour at the Roosters, maybe the Dolphins. Him and Katoa could be a good combination moving forward if they want to build a club around a young halves combination.
Yeah, well, there's probably only one guy that's going to answer that question.
Wayne Bennett, yeah.
And I think that if he's got interest, I would have no doubt whatsoever that he'd end up there. There's been a little bit of a family interest, a family mix take place there where they've all experienced each other's company, and I think it'll be quite a good move. It'll just be dependent on what the coach has got in mind.
Did he just re-sign, Sam?
He did earlier this year, yeah.
I don't know how long for.
Yeah,
look, I definitely think, you know, but it depends on how long he is where he is right now. But maybe he might get a bit sort of antsy or jumpy with being in that position. And look, the Dolphins have got money. They were unable to land Munster.
Jack
they had a crack at
Whiten.
Whiten. You know, Sean O'Sullivan, he's been doing a good job. But look, we know Sam's a quality player, and I've got no doubt the master coach would be having a think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the Roosters are one of 3 games you'll see at Magic Round live and free on Channel 9. Roosters up against the Cowboys. Come on, North Queensland, get me an upset on Sunday afternoon footy. Saturday night. I believe still.
I like that look. It was, I think, Lockie's choice of who's going to win this one.
Come on, Cowboys, get a win so we can replay that on Wide World of Sports links. Saturday night game 2, you'll see live and free on Channel 9. The Rabbitohs up against the Storm. How good's that? Yeah. And Friday night footy, Broncos up against Manly. Lockie thinks Broncos can bounce back and get a victory. Manly or Broncos?
I'll go for the Broncos in that one, yeah. I think they've got some injury problems as well, the Sea Eagles, so it'll be quite interesting to see how they do. It'll be one of those games again. They don't like each other, these two clubs, Manly or the Broncos. They despise each other, so we've got a beauty coming up.
And DCE always loves playing at Suncorp Stadium. One of 8 games Magic Round. How good? You'll catch all the action and the build-up on Nine's Wide World of Sports.